It doesn't feel like it's me. It feels like it's a virus that came into my brain, and it feels like my whole identity is changed.
Welcome back to Other People's Lives. I'm Joe Santagato.
I'm Greg Dybec.
For anyone out there that wants to be a part of the show, if you feel like you have a story that you want to share, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Go to oplshow.com or send us an email directly at oplpodcast@gmail.com.
Yes, and thank you to all the patrons who are supporting the show. If you want to join our Patreon, you can head over to patreon.com/OPLshow, where you will get all the bonus episodes. You'll have access to our Discord chat to talk with us, other guests, and other listeners. So you can support the show and get all that bonus content at patreon.com/OPLshow. So today we're going to be talking about, I guess, a disorder that Joe and I honestly had never heard of until today's guest emailed us. So we'll be speaking with someone who has homosexual OCD, so homosexual obsessive compulsive disorder, which I believe can also be referred to as sexual orientation OCD. And it's an excessive fear of becoming or being homosexual despite identifying as straight. So I don't believe that it's officially recognized as a form of OCD. However, there are a lot of people who have been sharing their kind of HOCD experiences and raising awareness for this particular anxiety in recent years. There have been cognitive behavioral therapists who kind of support that this idea and fear falls within the umbrella of OCD, but we've got a guest on the line to really explain her whole experience with all of this. So thank you for being on today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So in your own words, what is homosexual OCD and how did you come to realize that you had it?
So how I would describe it is, so basically HOCD is a type of pure OCD, which is constant obsessing over intrusive thoughts. So, like we all have these thoughts, like you could be walking over a bridge or something, and then you have like a random intrusive thought, like, oh, what would happen if I jumped over? But basically, when your brain is like prone to OCD, or when you have OCD, it's just these thoughts, they just stick to you. And for me, it's just constant obsessing over my sexuality. So, and yeah, the fear of being either bisexual or homosexual.
So when did you sort of realize, did you have a specific moment that kind of brought this out of you where, like, from then on, you weren't able to kind of shake this thought in your head? Like, when did this start?
So I should first mention that I've always been kind of prone to like obsessing. So when I was like 10 or 11, I had this horrible paranoia of like being kidnapped. And that lasted for a month or so. And then it went away. I was just like, oh, it's just normal fears and stuff like that. But then when I was like 12, I started being very afraid of getting breast cancer. And like these fears, they weren't like normal. I would feel like I'd have to do certain things, or if I didn't like say a certain thing, something bad would happen to either me or my mom. But yeah, also that lasted for like 6 months or something. So I knew from like the early age that I was very like, I knew that I was prone to obsessing. And then when I was 13, I remember just sitting on the bus one day, riding home from school. And I got this thought like, what if I was gay? And at first I was like, what? This is so weird, because I've always been like boy crazy. I've only had male crushes. I've never even looked at my female friends like that, never found them attractive. But then I was like, I'll just shrug it off. It will go away by the end of the day. And it just kept popping up in my brain, and I was kind of freaked out. But I thought, maybe in a week it will go away. But yeah, it just never went away. It actually got even worse. And yeah, it just got a lot worse through the following weeks.
So even kind of speaking to you right now, this is kind of a compulsive, intrusive thought that you're having, something that you still kind of think about and fear every single day?
Yeah, 8 years later, still a big like compulsion for me.
Is it something that you feel like you're dealing with on a day-to-day?
Definitely 24/7. It just never goes away. Like never.
Wow. So what about like sexual orientation or homosexuality? Like why, I understand breast cancer, for example, or being kidnapped. Those seem like obviously very terrible, scary things. And then to kind of put homosexuality or being gay kind of in the mix of those kind of fears and compulsions, like why that, do you think? And what's, what makes that so scary?
Well, because sexuality is obviously like such a big part of our identity, like reproducing and stuff like that. And I don't know, I've always just liked boys a lot. I had a lot of crushes growing up and stuff like that. So I think it just that's the thing that my OCD chose for me, the theme that it was going to bug me with. So I don't think there's like a certain issue with sexuality. I think it just happens for a lot of people with no reason.
So it sounds like what you're saying is it's not necessarily a homophobic kind of thing. It's more of,
No, definitely not. No,
it's like the just being unsure of your identity or who you are as a person.
Yeah, and also, so you guys are actually the first people that I've ever told this, like talking about it, because I think that anyone who has HOCD and is listening to this can agree that talking about it could be like horrifying, because obviously when someone tells you, oh, I'm just afraid of being gay, the first response will be, oh, it's okay, maybe you're just not ready to come out. And that's the response that I'm so terrified of. And also my family is like very supportive. I'm pretty sure that if I came out to them, they would be totally fine with it. And I'm also not, I have nothing against LGBTQ people. Like I love them. It's just that I'm scared of being a part of it, if that makes any sense.
I was just gonna say, like, what part of it makes it scary?
Because it doesn't feel like it's me. It feels like it's a virus that came into my brain, and it feels like my whole identity is changed. If my sexuality is not what it first was when I was younger, it feels like it's horrible. I feel like some days I feel like I lost myself. Yeah. I can't explain it. Like I feel like anyone with any type of OCD and like intrusive thoughts and obsessing would be able to understand what I'm talking about. It's just
Yeah, and we're not like trying to back you in a corner here or anything. I think it's just obviously, it takes a lot to kind of talk about this, and we're kind of assuming listeners kind of like us who have maybe never heard about this, it would seem like it's maybe a general reaction for people to think like, how is this not internalized homophobia, or is there kind of a problem, like do you have a problem with gay people? But you're obviously saying no, and that's why we just kind of felt it was important to obviously cover that topic kind of early on. But do you find like, is that kind of a theme with HOCD? Like, is there kind of a community out there who's like, oh, this is just like internalized homophobia in some way, this might not be a real psychological disorder or something like that? Have you come across that?
Yeah, definitely. Especially on Reddit, where there's a larger community of people that believe that they have HOCD. And I always, when I scroll through it, I see many posts of people being like, "Oh, you just hate gay people and you're afraid to say it," or maybe I think what's worse is even just being like, "Oh no, you're just in denial." Yeah, but anyone who is dealing with it can agree that, like, I have many gay friends, and never in my life, I wasn't even raised to like have any homophobia. I have nothing against them. It's a me issue. It's just part of my identity that I feel like it's being changed because of this disorder. So yeah.
Does it affect the way that you act around women?
Oh, definitely. So when I was 13 or 14, um, so when I first got these thoughts and I didn't even know what it was. So I had like one night, I had my first ever panic attack because I dreamt that I came out to my parents, which was horrible. And so I googled gay intrusive thoughts, and this came up, and I was so relieved. I cried. And just for the next few days, I had this urge to like unfollow all of my female friends, which is horrible. And also my best friend, I had the urge to distance myself from her because I was so afraid that I'm going to act out on my thoughts, which is also one of the bigger issues with OCD, the constant fear of acting out. So doing something you don't want to do. I was afraid I was going to, grab her or kiss her or say something inappropriate. So for a good year or so, I distanced myself completely from all of my female friends, unfollowed a bunch of them, deleted some of my social media just so I don't have to scroll and see girls. Also, I was horrified of seeing like female coming out videos on YouTube. I would constantly not report but remove the video from my timeline. And so
Are these thoughts so strong that are there days where you, beyond just being afraid of, oh, my sexual orientation is going to change, do you question yourself? Like, do you actually question yourself, like, oh, am I gay, or do I want to participate in a gay act or something like that?
Yeah, and what I also when I was like 15, which is so sad thinking about it, I made like a deal with myself. If I turn out to be gay, I'm going to kill myself. So that was like one of my lowest points, I think. I was just like, okay, so these thoughts aren't going away. Like my social life is, disappeared completely. Whenever I see a guy, I'm constantly questioning myself: do I like him? Oh, I can't like him. I'm gay. I don't find him attractive. Oh, I must be gay. So yeah, definitely question myself a lot, and it's always like a big question mark because in any type of OCD, there's never a final answer. It's just a question mark.
Does it help at all to have any sort of understanding about, sort of sexuality in general? I think that, at least for me, my basic understanding is that these things don't necessarily change. It's something, you're born this way, and then, you eventually either come out or you learn to accept yourself, and, that's what it is. But it seems like for you, you're worried about being like out of control. Like, does it feel like you're not in control of your body? Because you were saying like you, with your friend, you were afraid that you were just going to grab her and kiss her.
Yeah, obviously. So but now these days I just learn to accept the uncertainty, and so it's a lot better now. For example, I want to mention like for HOCD people that have it, reassurance is a big thing which um, we try to avoid. So like when I was at my worst, I would go on Google and I would just Google like, am I gay quizzes? And I would try to solve them for like 7 hours straight, like no joke. I would just scroll and try to get the perfect score of getting, oh, you're straight. And for many people, reassurance is what just brings you to square one, and that's why we always have to avoid it. That's why for HOCD they recommend doing exposure therapy, which is basically just going all in, exposing yourself to like gay people, books about gay people, books about coming out, books about even trans people and sexuality. And what I've come to learn through many years is that I have to accept, which is so hard even like saying it even now, that sexuality, I'll never be for sure 100% sure what I actually am. I have to think that it's like a spectrum. I might be gay, I might be straight, I might be bi, but whatever it is, I have to just be okay with it.
Interesting. So to kind of, I guess, to Joe's point, it's like, I guess it just shows how strong and illogical the fear and the OCD is, because you're not walking around homophobic. You're not walking around thinking sexuality is a choice or someone can be turned gay. You understand a fluidity of sexuality as kind of a spectrum or something that you're born with. So that all sounds very logical. It's just these intrusive thoughts that are constant, and how, I guess, strong the, OCD is, that it doesn't even have to be logical to still scare you, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Wow. So I mean, what about relationships going forward? I know Joe mentioned like friendships with other girls, but have you had relationships since you've had HOCD, or is that something that's kind of difficult?
Well, for a while, I was pretty sure that I was just going to. I was like, okay, if I don't like, because when you have HOCD, there's this thing that happens. It's just like your libido lowers, so you can't. Oftentimes, if you're a female, you just lose all interest for guys because of the huge anxiety in your brain. So for a while, I actually had a period where I didn't like anyone, and I was like, "Oh God, what if I'm asexual?" Which was even worse. But yeah, I did have a short-term like relationship, and it did mess with it a little bit. But I really liked the guy, so um, it just okay. Let me gather my thoughts for a second. It did mess with it a little bit, like when it came to like sex life and stuff like that, because there was days when it was just I felt like I wasn't attracted to him, and I was constantly questioning myself. But it ended for different reasons. But it's an obstacle, definitely, and it took me like a few years of just trying to accept that they have to live with this to be able to pursue a relationship. So it definitely did get in the way in a lot of ways.
You had mentioned exposure therapy. Is there any sort of therapy or treatment, I guess I will call it, that you kind of do on a day-to-day or weekly?
Well, I just try to expose myself. There's no like one therapy that they recommend. Exposure therapy, and I think they recommend CBT also, for like anxiety relief and stuff like that. But exposure therapy is extremely difficult because you're so afraid of something, and then you have to like sit and watch a 40-minute video of a woman saying that she came out in her 40s, and this is one of my biggest triggers. And so you have to just sit there and listen to it and accept that, okay, this might be me, this also might not be me. And yeah, I try to expose myself on the daily, definitely. What I did for a while was I made like a separate Instagram account, and I followed a bunch of like LGBTQ positive people, just so I could scroll through my timeline and see their posts and their coming out stories, which was very difficult for me, but I think it did help in the long run. It did help.
But it seems like you're learning to be more accepting of any possible outcome, it sounds kind of like you said before, of kind of starting to understand, sexuality as kind of a spectrum, and understanding, where you might fall. Like, it's before you said something really intense and, sad to hear, your younger self, that if it ever became clear to you that you were gay, that you would want to end your life. Has that thought shifted? Like, if there was a possibility that you come out one day, like, would you have learned to accept that? Would that be something that you could live with?
Yeah, definitely. I'm still working on it, but I think I'm obviously doing a lot better. So when I think about like those suicidal thoughts, it feels like a whole different person. Right now, I'm not sure what tomorrow brings, obviously, because I do have like really bad phases. But right now, I'm pretty sure that I would be okay, like with if I turn out to be gay or bisexual, I would just like accept it and move on with my life, even though there's still, just saying it out loud, there's like anxiety in my chest.
Right. But do you also fear that you may be asking this question for the rest of your life and kind of always wondering and never kind of settling into, okay, this is who I am, or I'm straight, or I'm gay, or I'm bi? Like, would there almost be a relief in knowing in your own mind instead of constantly questioning it?
Obviously, yeah, but I kind of accepted that this is just going to be my life, because it's been such a long time. And even through my like best phases, which is right now, there's the thoughts are always there. Like when I see a guy that I find attractive, my first thought is going to be like, oh, he's attractive. And then the second one will be, oh, but you know what, if you like, you guys get in a relationship and you realize you're gay. So I still do get these thoughts, and I'll always be uncertain, but I just learned that it's just a part of me, and it's not my full personality. It's just a part of this issue that I have.
No, absolutely.
And you know, it seems like you're, you know, taking a bunch of steps, and you know, it sounds like a very, like an extremely difficult thing to be dealing with on a day-to-day, like psychologically, to the point where you're saying it's affecting your relationships with some of your good friends, and you know, just like dating in general. So I mean, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting sort of thing, because it kind of, like you said, I mean, it's a hard thing to deal with too, because I mean, I think either Greg or someone mentioned in the beginning that it's not like really recognized yet.
Yeah, is that
Greg?
true? I think from some research, like in the actual sort of like DSM, you know, like mental disorders kind of book, you know, I don't think there's necessarily like an official kind of label for this, but I don't know. Do you have any insight on that? Is that, you know, are more therapists kind of understanding and accepting this as more people talk about it? Do you think it will kind of get recognized officially?
Yeah, I don't think it's recognized at all. But so from like 2014, 15 to up to now, there's a lot more like articles about it, and more OCD therapists talking about it, because this is not something strange. This is just a theme that OCD takes. So for example, there's also POCD, which is pedophile OCD. So being afraid of being a pedophile. There's ROCD, which is relationship OCD. Being scared of that the relationship that you're in, which is mostly a romantic relationship, that you're hiding something, or that your feelings aren't valid in it. So I think, yeah, it's definitely getting more recognition, which is great, because back when I first found out about it, I couldn't find like a lot of information about it, and that's what made me even more scared, because I was thinking like, oh, what if this is just, you know, denial and people that haven't come out yet and stuff like that. But it's definitely getting more recognition now. Yeah.
No, I think it for sure is in a much more mainstream way. I mean, one of the articles that we had referenced when Joe and I were kind of talking, you know, before this episode and doing some research, was in Esquire, and they had spoken to a bunch of people with HOCD. So yeah, it seems like it's getting out there. It seems like communities are growing, and you know, just thank you for talking about this. I know, you know, I guess it's not easy, because I think, one, like we said in the beginning, you know, there's a controversial nature to this for sure. And I think there's people who their minds might not be changed that there's some sort of homophobia attached to this. And then on the other side, it's, you know, that fear that you've said you've always had of talking about this, where someone might just say, oh, but you're probably just gay, and in denial. And it's, you know, I know that's from how you've kind of explained how intrusive these thoughts are and how strong they are. I know that can't be easy to kind of come out and talk about this and, you know, understand what people might say or think about it. So seriously, thank you, because this is something that we had never heard of, and it's, you know, you really enlightened us on it.
Thank you for having me. I'm just like really glad to be talking about it, because there's not a lot of information about it on YouTube, for example. And I know that I would have really appreciated just hearing someone talk about it when I first got these thoughts. And yeah, it's just very scary and isolating, and you feel like there's something wrong with you. And yeah, just a very difficult thing to deal with.
And we appreciate you also, opening up to us, because you had said that you haven't really told anyone this. So we hope that, this was in a way sort of therapeutic for you. And is there anything that you want to like leave, people with? Because like you said, there's not a lot of information about it. You wish there was a YouTube video where you could have watched where someone was talking about their experience. So now that there will be, is there anything that you kind of want to say to anyone that might be struggling with this as well?
Well, I think the best thing would be just to educate yourself. Find like books about OCD and other types of OCD, and just read and just try to find yourself in those words, and don't try to like self-diagnose or anything. But also, if you're able to just talk to someone, which I know it's very difficult and easier said than done, but just do whatever makes you feel do what gives you relief, and do what helps you sleep at night easier, because it certainly it's difficult to sleep with this, the overthinking and everything.
Yeah, totally. So thank you so much again. And we learned a lot, and, like we both said, we know it's not easy, and we know you mentioned this is the first time that you're really talking openly about it. So we appreciate you choosing our platform for that. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's be real with ourselves. We all shop online and we love the convenience of it, but nothing is worse than seeing that promo code section and not having a promo code for it. But thankfully, there's Honey, the free shopping tool that scours the internet for promo codes and applies the best one it finds right to your cart. Literally, all you do is shop like you normally would, and at checkout, the Honey extension will find a promo code for you within seconds. It's kind of like magic, and they support over 30,000 online stores. Personally, I have a big trip coming up this summer. Realized I needed new hiking boots because mine were shot. Thanks to Honey, I got 20% off my order, which saved me like $30. Went to the checkout, boom, Honey extension, promo code, inserted it. Without Honey, I would have paid full price, but now I got to save. And if you don't already have Honey, you're straight up missing out on free savings. It's literally free to install and just takes a few seconds. By getting it, you'll be doing yourself a favor. You'll be supporting this podcast, which we really appreciate, and you'll be saving yourself money. I would never recommend something that I don't use, and I literally use Honey on every single checkout for online shopping. So you can get Honey for free at joinhoney.com/OPL. That's joinhoney.com/OPL. Literally free savings. Go get it. This is one of those episodes where I'm fairly speechless in our final thoughts.
It's a weird thing, because it's like, I get having overwhelming thoughts. Like, I've dealt with like anxiety and like overthinking and like, whatever. So I've been there where I have these thoughts where I'm like, this is ridiculous and this is illogical. And I know it is, but you can't stop it from happening. And that's why this like sucks so much too, because not only is it a difficult thing just to deal with that kind of like thinking or whatever, or overthinking, but then to have this like undertone of like homophobia too, where people are like, oh, you're afraid of being gay? Like, what's wrong with being gay? And it's like, it's not about that. Like, it's the fear of like not knowing, I guess, of like the unknown, of like not being sure. But I feel like it's very complicated. And
I feel for her. It's like, it's just such a,
it's so complicated.
Delicate,
there's so many moving
complicated parts. And people will have strong reactions, I think, to this, especially because it is a technically not officially recognized disorder, but there is a fairly large community around this, and like taking her word for it that this isn't sort of an internalized homophobia that she recognizes. It's just like, if a diagnosable OCD aspect of this, I feel for her, like how how it controls her life, just intrusive thoughts and overthinking, like you said. But wow, I don't even know. Like, I did not know that this existed, because it feels like something like friends would joke about almost,
Well, it's that, and also it's so complicated that I think when you hear about something for the first time, you try to compare it to other things that and try to like fit it into a bucket. And this is just not one of those things, because it's very like nuanced. Like it's I don't know, because like I said, I've been there and I've had these psychological thoughts, and you're like and you're sitting here, and like that's why I was asking the question of like, do you think you're just out of control? Because it's not like you're like out and you're like, oh, I hope I don't kiss. Even like just being straight, like I hope I don't just like kiss a girl. And it's like, that's not really I'm not out of control of my body. You know what I mean? Like regardless of my sexual orientation. So like that's an illogical thought. So she's sitting there and like she knows that. And she knows that. And she knows like I don't have a problem with gay people. So why do I have this like the internal struggle must be so hard to deal with, because it's like I don't have a problem with gay people, and I know that I'm in control of my body. So why do I feel the need to distance myself from my friends who are women and, look away whenever there's like a coming out video or whatever? Like, that's a hard thing to deal with. I mean, like you said, you were taking her word for it, and that is the true like reasoning, and it's not, actually based in homophobia, which I don't think it is. Just because that would be a lot easier. Like, it would be a lot easier just to be homophobic and be like, I don't like this. I don't like any of that shit. I don't support it, whatever. Kind of push it to the side. And I don't think anyone would really identify as HOCD if it was just homophobia. You know what I mean? It would be more rooted in hate than
you
it
would think
be.
So, yeah. No.
This just feels more of like it's rooted in like I'm lost and I just need an answer. Kind of,
That's the tough thing with, I guess, kind of an emerging disorder, if you want to call it that. That's not necessarily recognized, or that there's not specific therapy for it. And it's even from like some research that I did before the call, it seems like that's the main question that's being proposed. It's like there's this growing community, this kind of emerging disorder of HOCD that people are saying, here's my experiences. I seriously struggle with this. I'm not homophobic. I understand, how sexuality works. Like, but I feel this and I have this fear no matter what. Like, they're claiming they're not lying. And then the question and the debate that happens around that is, well, then is this a real psychological disorder, or is this some sort of intrinsic homophobia, with layers around that? And, I mean, obviously we're not here to answer that. And it's tough. And it's tough for her, kind of going through this. And that's kind of the debate swirling around this. It's interesting. It's so new, I guess, the conversation around it.
I think there's just a lot about mental health that like we don't know yet. Like there's a lot that we do know. We as in not me and you, but like the human race. But like there's also a lot that we don't know. And and like someone who has a fear of flying, like people try to calm them down by telling them like it's actually safer to fly in a plane. Like you're more likely to get struck by lightning. You're more likely to get into a car accident. Like way more likely to get into a car accident. You're okay with being in cars. So it's like you have an illogical fear of flying but people can understand it because they're like, yeah, I get it. You're in the air, right, and like you're high, and like if it crashes, we're all gonna die. So I can understand that because I understand a fear of death. So it's like you can understand these things. What you can't understand, though, is the fear of just being gay. Because it's like your life the needle doesn't move crazily in that regard if you're just accepting of yourself. So that's why I'm saying, like, because people can't really identify with the actual fear, they are just like, what is that? That's why it's like immediately like, I just need this to be recognized with something that I can like understand. You know what I mean? And that's why it's a difficult thing to deal with too, or just even be recognized on, like this, is because like it's hard to say I'm afraid to be gay without sounding like you're homophobic.
Yeah.
Like
because on a mainstream stage, like how we see it, any fear associated to homosexuality is typically fueled by hate, fueled by religion. It's like we kind of understand the force that's pushing that fear. Whereas with her, it's like, no. It's not that. It's not hate. It's not my religion. It's just a fear. It's just my identity changing. This is just what my brain is telling me to be afraid of.
Dude, when you think about it, like, I remember seeing shows back in the day, which it was kind of fucked up now that I'm thinking about it, but like on Maury, they would have people who have like strange phobias, and then they would, I don't know if this, I also don't know if it was like real, but I remember this one episode of this woman who was terrified of peaches. These people exist in the world, not with peaches, but with inanimate objects or, whatever. And then they immediately turned the screen behind her to a bunch of peaches, and she like lost it and like ran off set, like mad fucked up. Would never happen in this day and age. But it's like something like that. If we can recognize that like that exists, right? And we're like, dude, it's a peach. It's not going to hurt you. It's just like a fruit, and it tastes good. And like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and what is, so it's like, you can't understand like, what is there to be, whatever. But if we have we're easier accepting that than we are something like this. You know what I mean? Like, I think phobia, and that's what I'm saying, like, we don't really have a 100% understanding of the mind or mental health or anything. And maybe we will never have that. But I definitely think these things are real. I definitely don't think, I think it would be too easy and lazy to write it off as like, this is just internalized homophobia. I think that's an easy thing to identify as to like, there's a lot of gay dudes who are mean to gay people in high school and they come out as gay. It's like, okay, yeah, we get like what happened there. Right. So we can identify and like, we know to like add this tag to certain situations like that. But with things like this, it just doesn't feel that easy. It feels more like, I don't know, complicated.
Yeah.
But I also could be wrong, so I don't know.
Well, totally. I mean, this is just us processing, literally learning about this for the very first time. And it, again, like when it's, we don't have answers here. We're, processing this and just as confused as you guys, a lot of you guys listening, I'm sure. But nonetheless, glad that we're able to kind of host that conversation. And, we meant everything we said to her, where it's for sure not easy to come out and say those words and talk about those things, especially in just the climate that we live in today, and so thank you to her for, even just sharing that, shedding light on her personal experience, and really interested to see the conversation, kind of around this episode for sure.
Yeah. And also I just want to say that for anyone out there that is sort of dealing with, coming out or whatever, I just hope that regardless of the situation, if you want to come out, if you don't, if you want to, it's all your decision. But I hope that everyone just finds it in them to just accept themselves, like for who they are, whatever that means. Like this girl seems to be very unsure of her sexuality, which is okay because she's starting to like, kind of address it. But regardless of the outcome, like just learn to accept yourself and, live your life. Definitely, if you're dealing with some sort of, suicidal thoughts or any dark thoughts like that, definitely seek the help of a professional. And yeah, that's pretty much it. But for anyone out there who wants to be a part of this show moving forward, definitely don't hesitate to reach out to us. Like I said in the beginning, you can reach us on our website, oplshow.com, or send us an email directly at oplpodcast@gmail.com.
Yes, follow us on Instagram at OPL Podcast. And if you want to become a patron, go to patreon.com/OPL Show. Like we said in the beginning, you get all those bonus episodes. And this season, we're doing something that we're super excited for, where each month, 25% of the Patreon funds are going to a new charity or a charitable venture or experience, or maybe something to help out a previous guest. Basically, if you join and become a patron, you kind of become part of the discussion of what do we want to do with this money that's set aside each month to help someone or help an organization. So really, really excited to be able to give back in that way, through the show and through the help of you guys. So check that out, patreon.com/OPL Show.
And that is all. See you guys next time.